pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
With that, I'll call to order the regular meeting for the Osceola School Board of Education for Wednesday, December 11th, 2024. Roll call, Brooke Oy. Yes. Corey Smith. Yes. Tyson Martin. Yes. And myself is here. Item 2 is public comment. Before we begin public comment, I'd like to outline the rules and guidelines for public comments. These rules are designed to ensure that the public comment period is productive, respectful, and orderly. Each speaker will have a maximum of 5 minutes to address the board. We ask all speakers and attendees to maintain a respectful and courteous tone during their comments. Personal attacks, disruptive language, or disruptive behavior are unacceptable. They should pertain to matters that fall within the jurisdiction of the school, should avoid confidential information. There will be no questions or debate from the board. The board members may choose to address comments or request further information at a later time. With that, we have one speaker, and that is Rhett Larson, with the topic to address of the survey. You would come to the podium, please.
Sure. Rhett Larson, I live in the town of Alden. I am a resident of the school district. I'd only planned on making a few comments about the survey that was sent out, but I do have a couple things that came up based on some of the discussion in the committee meeting. The first thing would be the 2013 committee that was formed to stop maintaining the elementary school. That was brought up at a former meeting, and I have it recorded if I can find it for anybody that wasn't on the board at the time.
Did you say 2013?
I believe that's the date that was presented in that meeting. It was a meeting that we had in the library. It was one of those meetings back, I think, 2 years ago. So maybe some distrust throughout the voting public with when that happens, and this seems like a typical agenda that the government uses. They stop you maintaining something to drive it down, to make it look like it's horrible and we have to spend all this money to replace it. So I'm not saying that that's what was done. If it's at the point where it's not worth maintaining, then by all means, don't put the money into it, but that money needs to go to a fund to replace it, not just get spent somewhere else. So maybe release some of the information on that. It might shed some different light for people that aren't aware of that or don't understand it. Regarding the 1.3 million that was cut last year to balance the budget, and then we end up with $1.5 million short again this year. It seems more like a spending problem than a funding problem. If it was a funding problem, we would be not $1.5 million below again. So had you not done the cuts, we'd be $2.8 million short. So, and part of that is I see in the meetings that I come to is we're continually, the board, the school district is continually spending more money on things every meeting. This is great, it only costs $10,000. And we do it, and maybe it is the best thing for the school, but if we're not cutting $10,000 somewhere else, we're gonna end up $1 million over budget. It might not seem like a lot at each meeting, but if we take $10,000 at every meeting and add all that up, pretty soon it does equal hundreds and thousands and millions of dollars eventually. Whether that's additional staff, additional, like the board docs program itself was an $8,000 ad, and there was nowhere that money was covering that. Another thing that's very hard not to notice is all of these like printouts with this big O on them. That's a rebranding, that costs money to do all that stuff. And it is a little bit depressing, even looking back at the 1947 thing, there was no big O's on that, there was chieftain heads. And there's a lot of pride in our school district and in our community with that, and seeing that is just, it's kind of unsettling. The last thing I have was something that kind of sparked my mind. It was on my mind, but it sparked it with the high school score reports. Not too long back, the district passed a policy that allows teachers to discuss non-associated topics in the classrooms. So if they're spending their time talking about things that don't have anything to do with school, that's distracting from learning. A prime example of that is, and my kids continually come home to me and they're like, this is what we talked about today. And I'm like, that's not math, That's not reading, that's not English, that's not school. Like, I don't know, it's not core learning from what I remember and what I feel school should be. One specific example, my son came home to me today and said that they were instructed by staff that they are not allowed to associate sex with gender. Now, I'm not sure how that correlates to raising our math scores, or why that's being directed at students from staff. Hopefully, some of that helps maybe get some stuff out. That's all I have.
Thank you, Brett.
Thank you. Item 5 is the consent agenda. Authority has it before you. What would be your wishes? Motion by LaVoy, second by Mr. Schmidt. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed would be nay. That's approved. Item 6 is the school board committee report. Committee report from tonight, December 11th.
I guess I'll take it.
Woo-hoo.
School Perceptions and Brain Baird joined us to review our community survey results. Survey we had out considering possibility of operational and or capital referendum. A lot of data to digest. Board would like more time to look at it. We agreed we'll meet sometime before January 8th, we just don't know yet when that will be. We had some administrative reports and a little update on Millie. I forgot her last name right now.
Chapman.
We're from our aquatics center coordinator and all the exciting things happening at the pool. And that took up our time.
Thank you so much. We're gonna table item B, student representative report to our next, meeting in January. Postpone indefinitely. Item 7, aligning, developing, and supporting our staff. Item A is our graduate class project update. Come on up.
It's okay, no, you're fine.
As Lorraine's handing those out, again, this is our grad school project that we're doing. It kind of stemmed from Lorraine wearing multiple hats as a community member, a parent, and a district employee. We just took it and ran and had a lot of fun doing it, learned a lot, and we can continue on.
We're so grateful that to have your support with this when we started. And if you remember, we ran several forums to gain that feedback, and we are here tonight to share all of that feedback with you. So we held multiple forums, and we did kind of separate them, though we didn't exclude anyone from a particular forum. We still targeted them towards different audiences. So we held a couple for staff, a couple for students, and community members, and the questions were formatted that way. So we used the 6 hats thinking structure, which we talked about, and we'll get into again in a few minutes, talking about those specific thinking lanes. And we used a restorative circles format to make sure that we are equally listening and valuing everybody's input, and again, open to everyone.
Just a review of what we kind of talked about at the first meeting, our hats, hats is how we structured the forums, and the blue hat was kind of how we started and began each session, like here's our goal, and trying to come together as a district and community, and how can we partner together in creating the best atmosphere for everyone. And then white hat is just the facts. And we went to red hat, getting with those lovely feelings. And then talked about positives of ideas or current things that were happening. Black hat was kind of your devil's advocate, making sure, you're looking at, does it match our mission statement, our values? The video said, are you breaking the law? We made sure we didn't do that. And we also ended every night, most sessions, we really it went green hat then to blue, kind of summarizing everything, but green hat was just, well, what ideas do you have? Cause you can complain about something or get stuck in the white or black hat, but if you have a problem but don't bring a solution, it's we're not getting anywhere. And so we really focused on that green hat and coming up with new ideas, and that's where things could go in the future with any of those ideas.
So, looking at some white hat items just from the different forums that we held. So attendance, we had 2 staff events, and we had 6 at the first one and 8 at the next one. Community, we had 1 attendee at the first one, 4 at the second, and 2 at the last one. And then for our student one, we had 6 plus a teacher, a staff member. And then just, hey, tech issues. So then just some statistics that we gathered too, just of those in attendance, 44 of them were parents or guardians, 72% were teachers and staff, and then 27% of them were general community members. So those dates are when we had our staff meetings. We had one in September and one in October. Community outreach opportunities, we had one in October, November, and December.
So, something to say about the community ones, homecoming week, voting, election, and then it was really cold last
It
week.
was so cold.
So you know.
So cold that like nobody went outside.
I'm sad that you had such low numbers.
We were a little
It was just,
disheartened, yes. And then we did our,
Homecoming, election, and.
I know, what are the, and of course, like, we set it up, before we,
Yeah.
like, even knew about some of, yeah.
I also definitely just had it in my head that the election was the next week. Like I did in my head, try to avoid the election, like, oh, it's the second Tuesday, it wasn't, it's the first, so.
And then, and ironically, that was the one we had the most attendance at. And then we met with students on the 5th. And then we just, some of the themes, so the first staff meeting, we had attempted like a work-life balance conversation and just decided after reflecting on that it wasn't exactly what we were going for with these intended meetings. And it didn't really focus on students and the district and community like collaboration. So the next one, we flipped that and did like a teamwork and collaboration type theme and talked to them about how we could collaborate together as a team and with the community and all of those things, and that went much better. Community, we talked a lot about like the school and community relationship, how we can work together as a whole community, both school and outside, to kind of help build up our students and focus on moving forward with all of them. And then the students, we asked them how they felt their voice was being heard within the community and district, and how they feel like they can participate or are allowed to participate or would like to participate more in those areas.
And then that was our white hat for you. This is kind of what came out of our white hat discussion with all the participants' perceptions of the factual things that we have in place. So for the staff, specifically talking about that teamwork and collaboration, like the common prep time and the curriculum hub, think that these things are supportive of their roles. Most people, most of their teammates are willing to collaborate. Google sharing is really helpful for us. One of the things that we had a lot of feedback on, really wishing that we still had, was that pre-COVID there was a Middle Border Conference Ed Camp, where the conference of all the schools works together, and teachers had a great opportunity for professional development, and on top of that, a choice in what they wanted to learn or grow in and implement. And so there was a resounding call for that to be available if it were possible again. They really like that, and would also really like instructional coaching, or they like when there is support for that, and teacher mentors. Those things are really important. For the community, a lot of great feedback about the things that the district puts on that community is allowed to participate in. So a lot of love for concerts and how well attended our concerts are, how excited the kids are, how much we showcase of what we do, and then the ways that we get out into the community as well. The pumpkin delivery, like Julie was talking about earlier. I know we also go out and sing, but social media updates, the parades that we're in, PTA events, and so much more that you can see that that the community just really likes the relationship in these ways. And then students, current voice and participation, having the student representative on the board, a big deal. And then email and meeting about the school logo. I didn't get to be at this one, so I might
That
have
was
to
with
pass
Dr.
that.
Styles, they felt
Heard and supported.
heard, supported, and valued, and having a discussion about that and being invited, like, just the opportunity to have that voice. They really appreciated it at the meeting, and so it was powerful. Red Hat, just talking about the feelings, staff, there's trust in our current relationship, that was the first thing that came up. And I thought that was pretty powerful. They felt supported in our work, I can go to anyone for help. And the one thing is, when we had our second staff one, positive for themselves, there was one whole team there, and they talked about how they just love their team, and they were nervous, wondering if other teams had that unity with the changeover in staff, which is natural. So that's what that comment means. Other feelings about us, you know, just with our district, it's a roller coaster ride. They do, and one thing I thought was powerful at that meeting was supported and heard even as a young teacher. They felt heard and valued. That was pretty cool. And as far as our community, mostly the first thing people talked about was pride. Like, they had pride in our community and our school. They noticed the community sometimes is resistant to change. Just when there's changes the school does, or in some of those things, it was somebody who had moved in and noticed, like, when there was something changed, that seemed to be like, whoa, and that community member said, well, if you take a step back, they're really doing it for the betterment of the kids. And so it was cool to hear that from that person. A lot of people said they have a really positive look on the relationship, but then they look online and are like, oh, okay. And then there was somebody who did say that our community has failed our children because we complained about not having a voice, but then we had low attendance. So it was contentious, conflicted. They feel like, you know, it's pride, but how do we fix it, or how do we make it better? And then students, they felt everything was getting better. Improvement is evident, but they talked about how it felt it was slow, and they're only on Oscar for so long, and so, you know, change takes time, and they see that it's changing, and so it was just interesting to hear them say that. And they know that the more time I have on Oscar, the more voice I have, because I have that experience. So it's pretty interesting to hear that.
Can you remind me, the students, was it just open to high schoolers?
Oscar, the student council.
Yeah, specifically spoke with that set of kids. Neat. So this was these were the positives that came out at our discussion. So just some highlights from staff. Welcoming classrooms. One of them said it was intense coming in, but there was a lot of moving pieces and everything going on at the time. Everybody's always willing to help, and people feel free to share their ideas and be open about things. Community, they talked a lot about the different positive things that are going on in the community that the school participates in. They talked about things like Light of the Night, social media highlights, the coffee shop, open door conversations with Dr. Styles, and just all of those different things that are already going really well in the community. Students talked about, again, meeting with Dr. Styles and Mr. Newton, and one kiddo was particularly proud about their petition they put through for a microwave at OMS, so.
I know that kid. That's what I said. I know one of the kids there.
So some barriers, things, obstacles that came up as we were discussing different things, obviously the referendum came up and how that continues to fail. And that being a barrier, some of the staff felt like it was hard to kind of be in two separate buildings, yet try working really hard to collaborate and be, continuity, just be one staff when we, are separated by two buildings. And talked a little bit about changeover, things like that. Community-wise, again, the idea of some being very resistant to change. They talked about it's hard to volunteer with all of the different systems in place. They understood why they're there, but talked about how it would be nice to be able to get in a little more easily, or for the kids to get out into the community, and some of that is hard with, just kind of how life is at the moment in our society. Not a lot of time for parents and teachers to connect in person, because of some of those things and all the safety requirements and things are just kind of a barrier. It wasn't like a positive or a negative thing, just is what it is. Students talked about, with every positive, there seems to be a negative, they said, so like, one step forward, two steps back, I think one of them mentioned, like, you get a little, but then like, you're like, oh, well, that doesn't really work. They felt like sometimes, because they're younger, sometimes they feel like, oh yes, that's nice, and kind of a pat on the back and, things like that, but, and they said it's hard to, put themselves out there when they know that there's so much going on and things, so they're like, a lot of times we just kind of take a step back and wait, because they know that there's a lot for everybody right now.
I thought that was a testament to them just having a temperature on everything.
Very empathic, thoughtful.
Understanding that there's already a lot going on. Yeah, I don't know, that just was pretty cool to see them have that,
Well, if they're adult hat.
yeah.
It was
Yeah.
very amazing to sit down with them and have these.
Which is the great part of high school, because
Adult
at some point they cross into high school, or adulthood mentality in those 4 years, right?
What if they don't?
I'm still waiting for her, to be honest. But, yeah. Green hats, were those suggestions. Those are the times where anything is on the table, whatever your wild ideas are, and we worry about the barriers and the highlights or awesome outcomes later. So just so many of these, and I will also highlight that I'm gonna highlight a few, and then on your very last page of this packet, we couldn't fit them all in here, so you've also got one giant list of things to peruse. But from staff, we already talked about that ed camp, teachers observing each other, in and out of each other's buildings, in and out of other districts, maybe having some kind of a partnership, again, for that professional development. Again, with the difficult to be one staff in two buildings, being able to have staff meetings together, and some of the things we already liked, like the pickleball that we started this year. Thank you, Dr. Stiles. And community, more opportunities and ease for volunteers in all buildings. So we have some things that have made it more difficult, like we were talking about in COVID, but there are also some suggestions of, why don't we just look into what would it take to get volunteers back in to be reading to our kids or supporting our teachers or helping with things that, could make something easier for staff to focus in on our students, or something that could support students just more than they already are. Family nights, daddy-daughter dances, mom-son Nerf nights, all sorts of things like that. I do know at St. Croix they have quite a few of those. And those from my St. Croix friends, very positive, very fun things to do. And
What's OJT?
On-the-job training.
Thank you.
yes.
Because we know that it's already out there, but how many more opportunities could there be out there for other businesses to partner with the school with that? That was just something.
And I was thinking, OJ Simpson.
And
Like a
something,
lecture?
this
Okay.
came up this last one, is how we have, like, I know Mr. Hahn is doing the weekly updates on what's coming up. Those are playing at the hospital, like,
Especially with the senior
just,
pass.
and cause they wanna know when the events are, and they may not have that direct access because the technology is maybe beyond what they have access to or want to have
Well, it's not
access to.
easy to navigate either.
Right.
Like, you go on, click, click, click,
Yeah,
click,
Yeah,
click, click.
and so just even, and I know the high school maybe even has this as well, but just having like, here's the events of the week, even if they get it from Han or just like the sports or even clubs. And it was just an idea that brought up that kind of really like, ooh,
And it kind of goes with, as far as the community members' contributions, part of their desire, right, was like, hey, we have this disconnect, or we feel like the community is separate now with people who aren't involved or don't have kids. However, it used to be that when they were able to be in the school or be at events more often because they were invited or welcomed or asked, then despite not having kids, they still had a better knowledge base and a connection to somebody else's kids. Because maybe they started reading to kids when it was their grandkid, but then that teacher was just like, you wanna come back? And they're like, sure, I don't have anything else to do, or I like the kids. They definitely, a lot of the intent with their green hat was definitely to build that community relationship and trust, which was just really encouraging. And then students, I apologize, I didn't get to be here for this, so I'm just gonna wing it or let somebody step in. But opening up a Google survey, to students, and letting their voices be heard. Virtual and physical suggestion boxes for Oscar, and then a communication chain, right? The idea here also is how can we build a better system to connect and make sure that your voice is continually heard? More than one representative on the school board. I know we had 2 last year. And then Oscar being able to get into the lower buildings and hear those voices. And I know that that was a welcome thing at the middle school, and we just I had a family thing last week, and so some of that fell through with being able to join
and
us.
it was really cool to do the Oscar and talking, because what somebody brought up, how the younger kids don't have a voice, and how do you hear from them? But it was kind of listening to it and hearing Mr. Leonard say, that's what Oscar's for.
Mhm.
Like, that's the long view plan of you being an Oscar student going down and being the voice for those. And so it was really cool to have that, like that light bulb went off, and it was like, oh, it was really cool to have them see that. That was in the proposal of Oscar, is that they would, as it builds, get into the younger buildings and do that. It was pretty cool.
And we talked about that as a representative of the board, connecting through the whole district, cause
Yeah.
that's true, but it's not something you can just do overnight. You have to take that person and then put them in, and how? What do you just throw them in a classroom? Do you throw them at lunch? Like, it's
And
not
the
the
age
easy.
appropriate ways.
Exactly,
Right?
so it's cool to see.
Roger again.
The Roger.
That was our-
Oh boy, we're back to that again. But it's fun to see their wheels turning the same way ours did when we were working on it, so, yeah.
And we don't want, I'm not gonna read verbatim, although we have already so far. I will say, staff takeaway, I know it was always in, that Julie Bender's plan to have a staff meeting, OES, OIS. And I was part of that discussion in starting, making sure that each building was solid. And we've already had one with both buildings, and it was great. There was a huge success, and people loved it. The buzz in the room was pretty sweet. And then overall, our meetings were positive with staff. People want to see the pros doing their best, so they really want to observe each other, whether that's here, there, or everywhere. That seemed to be where things are at, and things are heavyweight in anticipation for these heavy things. Like that was at the table. Community, the overall, it was very positive. We talked about a lot of things with the community. Highlights were they loved the concerts and the Veterans Day. Those came up every time, and especially people who had moved in, the attendance of those was resounding. Like they are profound for our community. And people want to get in our buildings and see and be with the kids. And we talked about how a background check used to take time and money, but now with the iPad things that are in place, it really helps. And we're just catching up with those times and making sure we're safe, but also creating opportunities. And they want to see the kids out more. A woman who was at a meeting said a picture is worth 1,000 words. If you can get that out, it's going to speak. And students, they appreciated having a seat at this table and being heard. Things change and take time, and that's what I had mentioned before. They want more opportunities than most to communicate and have the same things. We are also very thankful that you're letting us and give us your blessing in taking this further. We understand this is a unique time and respect the positions you're in. We're open to anything to meet, chat about this project or ideas that came and that are listed in that. But we also respect that you also have lives, families, and everything, and this is heavy, so we're just grad students. Not just, but we are learning
We're amazing, Chris.
we're learning this all, and so, we understand that and just really just say thank you.
So what I think is cool is that we got our community survey results, and then you got this, which is just another takeaway of the community. So I appreciate that, because reading a lot of these things are thoughts and things that I've had. So I'm gonna challenge you then with the one that I've been shooting on. So you tell me what your thoughts are after interacting with the community, is how do you connect with that non-parent, non-staff that maybe doesn't have a computer? The hospital thing came across, we talked about that, but how else?
We've already talked, I've been talking with my team about possibilities of getting us into, and the dance team too, getting out and going to like, the dance team asked, like, can we perform at the, at the retirement home, like, can we go out to the senior center, can we do those things? I was like, I think so, let me find out more. So the kids wanna do it too, they wanna get out there. I think it would be great at a school I used to work at, we used to write letters to the old folks at the senior center around like Valentine's Day, and so that we could send off some Valentines so that they'd get something that time of year and things like that. So already kind of ruminating some ideas that could come out of this and kind of build that connection back.
And the community member who had kind of brought up, like, referendums used to pass, and that's when older people were in the school. She's like, they're the ones who need to pass the referendum. They're the ones who need to get reading with the kids because they talk to each other. And that nursing home, the older generation, they said, they're the ones who are disconnected and not voting. And so even word of mouth of that opportunity, or even the reading to one another, seemed to be the idea that they kept coming back to, is that time when they could read with students or have the students read to them, came up a lot.
We even talked about bulletin boards, using the bulletin boards more too, because like at the senior center and at like the library and stuff, they're like, literally that's where a whole bunch of people find out about things. Some of the families who had just moved in were like, that's where we found out about everything. Like, not many towns use those anymore, but in Osceola, it's a pretty big thing, so using those bulletin boards too, they said, to kind of get the word out to people who aren't as involved and who would like to maybe connect with the school.
And newspaper, when people had talked about us, it was from the ad, or not the ad.
That was
That's a side note.
that was part of the
Sorry.
discussion.
Well, the fun thing was seeing how, when they ran this in the paper, a lot of word of mouth came from that, and so it's pretty cool.
I think though that you see too, you know, as you're reviewing the survey results and you're looking at the less formal conversation opportunity, I think you see the same reflections as you're looking at the same type of participation, the same feedback probably on any of those ends. And obviously we didn't get a ton into finances and things like that in our conversations. But I think that all of those pieces still working together, you know, I think that's something that we're still also, I think that is a whole six hats discussion. I think that's a conversation that says, how do we get these connections going? Black hat, yellow hat, green hat, and you know, we took some stuff away from this, but.
What's next steps for you guys, the three of you in grad school?
Taking this, putting this together and how we grew from it, and how, and reflecting and what, you know, coming up with a future plan of that resounding volunteer. They wanna get into schools, they want an opportunity.
Next steps for this concept, how would we, as we reflect, how would we do it differently, how would we do it better? You know, we talked a little bit about it matters that we're also from the district, and what would it be like if we went into a district where you didn't feel any of our bias at all?
Sure.
You know,
Truly like anonymous.
right. Yeah, and like we said, we know that this is a unique time for you, but we're happy to walk you through one if you would like to try that type of thinking and creativity, but after that, we also all have to do a whole nother passion project and lots more learning, but we really appreciated the experience and gained a lot, I think, in specifically learning about this level of connection and how to get there and maybe how not to.
And the resounding thing that as adults is it's so hard to keep the students focused because we get into our own bubble of how it affects me. And that's why we changed the staff one. It was so easy to turn back on how it affects me, but we're in education, we're in the community, building the school district. How can we keep it focused on the kids? And that really helped. And even in the blue hat, kind of overall, trying to make a moment in the room, like, let's make sure students come first. Like, what decisions can we make for the students? And that was a huge takeaway, because it was so easy to not, and turn it into how it affects me, but how can we do this for students? So, thank you.
Thank
you.
Thank you
Very
very
much.
much.
Alright,
Very cool.
That brings us to item 8, which is engage in continuous improvement of student support systems and programs. So item A is review the 2024 community survey results. I know this is a redundant item after we had it in the committee meeting, but we thought it was good to reflect back on what else we need going forward. So that's why it's here twice. We're not gonna look at the survey again. We all got the survey.
What do we need, like?
Between now and then, like, anything else that you are like, I wish I had this or that or this, just cause we,
I don't have anything to add to it. It is, I still really wanna see more of the comments, because as they were just discussing, and how we've got feedback, like, I learned from people's voices. So, obviously I'll learn from everything they checked off, but I do like the additional comments, because it can get more in depth. And I just need to better understand, and I think we all need to better understand, cause if we're all looking at it's tax dollars, but maybe there's something that wasn't on it that they're gonna throw out, okay, it's not just tax dollars, maybe they give us some feedback that's like, oh my gosh, yeah, that, I don't know, something can just trigger some other ideas for future things, and I don't know, I just look at the human rate. This is deep, but you just look at the human race, and I think we all just need to do a better job of listening to people, and that's why I just can't wait to see what everyone has given us for feedback.
Well, they say you have one mouth and 2 ears. Didn't they say?
I have heard something.
Yeah.
But I do think that if someone makes a comment rather than just checking a box, that's valuable.
Yeah.
So I'm anxious to see that too.
Shannon, Becky, anything to add on this?
As you help with things that cross your mind,
Yeah.
because they will,
Send
all of
it
a
out.
sudden, come up, just send it our way so we can make sure you have what you need.
I mean, my mind goes to, okay, so if we don't do this, then what? But I know we're not there yet, but it's hard not to go there.
Well, if there's nothing more, the next committee meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, January 8th, 2025 at 5 p.m. in the district office conference room. The next regular board meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, January 8th, 2025. Say that again. 6:30 p.m. in the district office conference room. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session pursuant to Wisconsin statute 1985-1C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, individual contracts, superintendent annual evaluation. D, considering strategy for crime prevention and detection.
I'll make a motion to move to executive session.
Motion by Kaisa, second by Buckroy. Roll call. Kaisa, Cory,
Yep.
Brooke,
Mhm.
and myself will take 5. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.